Alrighty, we are checking out the developer AMA for Dawn of War 4. This is from the official Discord. A bunch of people were able to submit questions, and then the developers have taken some time out to reply to them as the game's being developed here. The people who are replying, there's a Jan Thayson, Jan or Jan Thayson, and he's one of the co-founders at King Art Games and the King Art Games creative director. He's also the Dawn of War 4 game director, and he's involved in the narrative design, game design, and UI. So very influential in the game, obviously. And there's also Elliot, who's one of the senior game devs, and he's been in the studio for a long time, worked on Iron Harvest. So let's jump in. Let's see what the devs are talking about here. What's the last RTS you have played other than Dawn of War 4, and what do you like about them? The Dawn of War 1 Definitive Edition. Okay, so he's playing the DE. That's cool. It was a fun experience because I played every DAO game and add-on a couple years ago as preparation for our walk on Dawn of War 4. Oh, that's cool. So I went back and played the games. Now I played Dawn of War 1 again for a few years, and I was surprised how similar Dawn of War 1 and Dawn of War 4 felt. That's encouraging. If it plays like Dawn of War 1, I would be very happy. I still think there's going to be a lot of differences, but if it feels similar, that would be very nice. I switched back and forth between the games, and even though we didn't take any values directly from Dawn of War 1, we ended up pretty close because it just felt right. There were also some noticeable exceptions. For example, the time it takes to conquer a point was way higher in Dawn of War 1. And we actually discussed why that is and if it makes sense for us to go slower, or why we picked a different time here when usually we were so similar. So in Dawn of War 4, you're going to be able to cap the points quicker than in Dawn of War 1. That's pretty interesting, I guess. Will that work out to be better or not? I'm not sure. Maybe it would make the game a little bit more high tempo, more fast paced, if you're capturing and then using your units more actively afterwards. Then yeah, he also has Tempest Rising, but didn't play it. Okay. This guy played Homeland 3. Elliot played Homeland 3. Okay, let's go on to some more serious questions. So what is the biggest lesson you've learned from Iron Harvest? What are the main takeaways you learned from developing Iron Harvest that you did not know about, you did not know before the project? So Elliot says there are a lot of lessons that we learned, and the one I believe stuck with us in particular is finding the right trade-off between impactful animations and unit responsiveness. I think we've struck a much better balance with Dawn of War 4. Okay, so he's talking about the animations. This might be stuff like the sync kills or just the combat in general. Obviously, you want nice animations, and people love the sync kills and stuff. But you also want your units to be responsive, right? To be snappy. So I guess they have to decide, how locked into animations units are. They want them to look cool, but they might get interrupted if you give them a command. So they have a bit of a balancing act there. And then, ooh, what the fuck? What just happened? Okay, he said, I know Harvest was our first RTS and we're proud of it. However, RTS is a super hard genre to get right, and we knew there were lots of areas of improvement. When we started to work on DAO 4, we reworked a lot of the IH code base with a focus on units responsiveness and overall performance. So it looks like they really want the units to be nice and responsive, which is very good news for us. If you think of like games like StarCraft, and they're very well known for the engines being really responsive and giving you a lot of control over the units. In terms of gameplay, mission design, and so on, we looked at what worked well and what less so. And for example, decided to make missions only as long as they should be. Okay, so maybe the missions are a bit too long. For Iron Harvest, we wanted all missions around 45 minutes as a rule. That's pretty long for a mission, right? But for DAO, we are fine with some short missions and some epic missions. Whatever the mission and the story command. Okay, that's cool. So they're going to mix up the length of the missions a bit. That's pretty cool. So apparently 45 minutes is a rule. It's kind of interesting. Okay, let's skip to the next question. What is it? From a developer standpoint, what do you guys ultimately want DAO 4 to be? Is it just a passion project? Do you hope to help bring the 40K IP into the spotlight like SM2 did? Are you trying to create the perfect RTS or revitalize the genre? Is it a love for the classic series that you guys just wanted to bring into modernity? As a whole, I'm just curious if you guys are trying to innovate within the genre or if it's more of a project to perfect all the different things that make an RTS what it is. Wow. Oh, what a question. That's a pretty deep question. I would say we're trying to capture how many people felt when they first played Dawn of War and replicating that in the current era of the Warhammer 40K universe. I vividly remember playing the classic CNC games as a kid. Red Alert 2 is my GOAT. Hell yeah. Amazing game. And being blown away by the campaign's visual detail, memorable characters. Okay, so they're focusing more on the feeling of it and the world building and stuff like that. I think that's good. Personally, I only want to develop a game that can compete with DAO 1 and 2. And no mention of 3 there. And since both are absolute bangers, we have our hands full. Okay, interesting. The bar is very high. Good to hear that they think it's up there. Okay, another question from Roman. Considering the very passionate discussions within this Discord, how do you guys feel about us and the discourse for the game? Is there anything we as a community can do that will somehow be of any benefit to you guys? I think aside from being fans of 40K, fans of RTS games are also desperately looking for the next big thing. That's me. That is my life, looking for a big RTS. Considering how niche the genre is. Yeah, I've been trying to find a big RTS for years now, and they keep dying. RIP Battle Aces. But that's a good question. I've been blown away by the excitement and positivity we brought to the server. It's been really motivating. Okay, so then they're not being too... they're not too down about the negative people. There are a lot of negative people, but I think you're always going to have that whenever you try and make something. So I'm glad they're focusing on the positives here. We did a couple Kickstarter games and learned the value of getting player feedback. There are a lot of passionate people out there who know their stuff. Yeah, dude, I will say the Warhammer 40K nerds, like the lore nerds, I use nerds in a loving way, like, but those guys who know the lore, they know the lore. Like they studied it at a university or something. They know the lore very deeply. But anyway, a lot of the ideas are not feasible, and there are definitely some ideas that are possible to make the game better. Time's an issue, though, when there are so many posts and we have to finish a game. That is true. You guys will probably kick our asses in our own game 2 weeks in. That's that dev life. Okay, let's go to the next question. During the campaign, will story choices have an overall impact on the story ending, or are they just mission specific? That's pretty interesting. So the overarching narrative of the campaigns is linear, but your story choices will impact narrative elements within the campaign in question. Okay. As well as the choice of missions you'll have. So you can't change the key points in the story, I guess, but it'll give you different missions and stuff like that. Maybe a different path to get to the same destination ultimately. There are some choices that have longer reaching consequences, but many of the really impactful things are in the individual campaigns. Okay, and you can pick one or the other commanders. So you have some choice with the commanders, which can lead to a different experience. All right, next we got a question from, how do you say this, Croax? How will the co-op dimension of the game be structured? Will it be a separate campaign, or will it be the single campaign for multiple players? Okay, and do you have to play the same faction? So for co-op, for the campaigns, you and a friend control the same army and play through the single player missions together. Okay, so it's the same campaign, but you and your buddies can play it together. Oh, you can imagine it closer to the Archon mode of StarCraft 2, which we all love. But one guy micros, one guy macros, you give yourself different roles, or you control these squads, they control those squads, that kind of thing. Interesting. We got a question on equipment upgrades for commanders. So will there be equipment upgrades basically, or will it be something new or something old? You unlock gear and abilities for heroes throughout the campaign, as well as stratagems, powerful off-map abilities But so you get gear and abilities for heroes throughout the campaign. Okay. And then the stratagems unlock once, and then you can use them for the rest of the campaign. The gear and the abilities you have to equip in every mission. And the idea is based on the mission, you want to use different gear and abilities. Okay, so you want to pick what you're doing depending on what the mission requires of you. If it's about killing hordes of enemies in the field or defending the position, you might want to use a different loadout. That makes sense. I guess they give different stats or abilities, that kind of thing. Or you can just use whatever you like. Okay, Roman is back for another question. Let's just skip to the actual question. Are there any plans to underscore or influence a potential competitive scene? So this is talking about kind of esports, right? I feel like the campaign will definitely suck people in, but the multiplayer is what will keep the longevity of the game, of a game. I think he's definitely right that the campaign is what brings people in. Like the casual game modes are what make games popular, right? Like games aren't popular purely for their multiplayer in the beginning. It's all about the campaign, the world. People get invested in the characters and the story. I agree with that. Is multiplayer what keeps the game going for a long time? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not completely sure. I think some people still like to play the campaign after, years, or if like new co-op missions come out, they'll play those, that kind of thing. But I think the casual side is definitely the thing that should come first. I think a lot of games have come out recently, like RTS games, and they focus on the esports side, right? Like, oh, we're making an esports ready game. But people aren't invested in the world or the story. You don't have the casual player base there, which props up everything else above it, which is, the competitive scene, etc. Yeah. So from my point of view, several games with long-lasting competitive scenes got their starts because players were invested in the world and characters of a game. StarCraft comes to mind. Exactly, that's what I was just saying. And we're focused on creating a game that's faithful to the look and feel of the Warhammer 40K universe first, but we do intend to offer a variety of multiplayer game modes and features at launch. I think that's the right approach. Like, make the campaign good, make the world feel great, like get a good story, get the casual player base established, and then from that, if the game's also fun in the multiplayer, you can then have a like esports scene, right? But you can't have it without the casual player base. Yeah, like of course they'll have to make the multiplayer good, or there won't be an esports scene either. But without a casual player base, you also can't have one. Along the same lines, we've got a question from Jo Young Jin, a Korean, with regards to where you see Doubtful with regards to the esports world. Okay, so it's another esports question, basically. How will the absence of a morale system and the reliance on suppression and terrain be finely tuned to, I feel like these questions are like a little bit too early. And again, if I was the dev team, you want to think about it, of course, like, I don't know, make the game first, Obviously, we want good balance, sure, but balance can come in good time, but you only get one shot at making the story and the campaign good. Yeah, the Warhammer 40K fan base is global. Will you commit to allocating dedicated communication staff and resources equally across all major regions and languages? That seems like a huge undertaking. Do games do that? We'd like to know if all global communities will receive information and have their feedback acknowledged with the same priority as the main Western communities. Yeah, this is a very, as someone who lives in Korea, this is a very Korean question. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, guys. If a game gets made in Japan, do I expect it to cater to like Western communities as much as the Japanese community? Not really. I think people expect a lot from companies these days. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, the more feedback they can get, the better. But like, it's a lot of resources to actively monitor and receive feedback from multiple, you know, continents and in lots of different languages and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, let's see what they say about it anyway. If a game becomes an esport title or not isn't really up to its developer or publisher, it's up to the players. Yeah, that's true. We can do certain things to make it more likely, have good balance and some necessary features, but we can't force it and it's not our goal. We try to make a game that is fun and fair and multiplayer, and then we see what happens. I really like this approach. I think this is the right approach. Like, games that focus too much on esports, they end up like coming out like Stormgate, where they neglect everything else. I'm glad that they're taking this approach. And for point 2, our publisher Deep Silver has a global presence, and we'll work with them to get information to and from the community in parallel as much as possible. Okay. I mean, sounds like they're going to try. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Like, I kind of like a company to just like make their game and release it and then go, all right, this is what we did. I don't know if they need like feedback from all corners of the world at all times. In every language. But maybe that's just my opinion. Anyway, so next we got Pandior, who asks, will there be a dedicated balance team or larger test before launch so we can enjoy balanced multiplayer games? Yeah, again, I think launching with perfect balance like shouldn't be an objective of a company, because it's never going to happen. Like, think about every big game, every big RTS. Like, think about StarCraft 2 balance when it came out, or Warcraft 3 balance when it was released. Like, it's just, you can't expect to get it perfect on release, but it should be like a work in progress, you know, in my opinion. But of course, we're doing extensive in-house tests, but I also believe that a game like DAO4 is too complex to balance it alone. In general, we like to get player feedback, and we think DAO profits from getting many eyes on it before release. We can tell you more soon. Oh, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Does that sound like a playtest is coming? Is that what that reads like to you guys? Does that read like a playtest is coming to you guys? We think DAO4 profits from getting many eyes on it before release. We can tell you more soon. Dude, that sounds like a playtest. That sounds like a playlist test to me. I don't know if they'll have like a beta or something like that, but that really sounds like a beta or a playtest is coming. Early access or something, I don't know. Interesting. Some games do that, right? Like Tempest Rising had an early access. A lot of games have alphas and betas these days. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. That would be very cool news if we did get to play the game before release. But yeah, you guys are talking about the IP. I think the IP is amazing, obviously very solid. Okay, so away from multiplayer, let's talk about gameplay and mechanics. So Helping Hands asks, will there be idle animations and voice lines for units? I was like that in Warcraft 3, like and even like Mario 64, just like idle animations bring so much life to a game, I feel like. I think this would be a nice touch to make the world feel more alive and realistic. Okay, let's see. Absolutely, we'll have both idle animations as well as idle voice lines. Okay, pretty straightforward. Reaver Badass, do you intend to add multiple shooting animations to units and heroes? For example, in DAO 1, Guardsmen and Firecast Warriors could kneel while firing, and in Dawn of War 2, Orc Knobs would wah, or Imperial officers would reload their pistols mid-combat. We're generally still refining the visuals for units in combat, so expect more on this soon. Okay. Oh, Shake Vivid, a regular in the chat. Shake Vivid is the lore master. The lore master knows all the lore. Will the stats shown in-game for all the units be in basic form like DAO 1, or will we be able to see the full range of stats using tooltips? We'll be shown a selection of stats in the UI and in tooltips. We haven't settled on all the exact stats yet, but you can expect at least health, armor pen, experience, veterancy level, bullet points briefly describing the unit's key characteristics. No damage? If they added damage to that, I would be very happy with that. I think damage is just as important as all of these, so hopefully they add that too. Jake is basically a god around here. Yeah. Oh, so yeah, that's kind of interesting, right? The units are going to have veterancy. I don't know if that's going to be a multiplayer or just the campaign. That's kind of interesting. This is like a mechanic that's being added to more and more games recently, I feel like. Like the Scouring has it. Stormgate had it. Another one from Shake Vivid. Dude, Shake Vivid is farming this AMA right now. I know there'll be a Thunderhawk transport ability, but will there be actual transport units in the game, and will they work like DAO 1? We do not have any buildable transport units planned at this time, but the factions will have their own unique ways to move units around the map quickly. So no transport units at the moment. That's pretty interesting. But it says each race will have their own way to move around the map, so maybe they're gonna add in some different mechanics. Okay, Vermal Silk asks, how will the game translate player skill versus quality of life solutions? Okay, let's just check out the answer. So this is a complex topic, so to keep it brief, we want to create interesting decisions for players at varying skill levels and avoid cases where there is something that is a no-brainer. RTX games are complex beasts, so avoiding these situations involves a lot of systemic thinking, critical analysis, and playtesting. There are micro interactions and macro stuff, like what point do I capture next? Okay, we know what micro and macro are. We make sure that both kinds are in the game. We know that many players don't like to be forced to deal with micro decisions all the time. That's true. It's a great way to optimize your game when you're a strong player. Okay. So we offer some things to make it easier for beginners and intermediate players. So there's some quality of life stuff. For example, you can right click on an ability and set it to auto. This means the unit uses the ability when it makes sense. Okay, so they're gonna have auto cast on abilities. I wonder if that's on all the abilities or just some of them. You can also select multiple of your units and then draw an attack rectangle over multiple enemy units. Now your units will pick opponents out of the selected enemies on their own. Does that mean like anti-vehicle units are going to target vehicles and stuff like that? I'm not sure I like that. Both of these things make life easier for players who don't want to or can't deal with all the micro decisions. While of course very good players can do all of this, or at least some of it by hand, and get better results than the automated. Okay, as long as that's true, it's fine. As long as like doing it skillfully by hand, manually, is better than the automatic thing, then that's completely fine. Completely, yeah, it's good. As long as it's not lowering the skill ceiling, I think that's fine. Okay, how does the sync battle algorithm work? Yeah, the sync battles are pretty cool, right? You get like locked into combat until, you know, one of you guys die. It's a complex system. The combat director system stitches together snippets of animation based on the flags. I don't understand what that means. This allows us to create combat animations that adapt to context, such as how many squad members are nearby, how big, heavy is this opponent. Okay, so it's complicated is the short answer. We can check this out when they revisit this with the blog post or whatever. And following up on this, we're asking about unit responsiveness. So Karas wants to know, we see units getting knocked down by others. So if I'm playing the Orc and I want my units to leave combat, how responsive will it be? Will it be retreating instantly, or there'll be some delay due to animations? Yeah, so this happens in Dow 1, right? If you're knocked down, you have to wait until you stand up before you can run away. I think that makes sense. So melee combat is a big deal in Dow 4. Units that focus on melee always have the disadvantage. They must reach the enemy before they can deal damage. To make them competitive, they deal more damage on average. And we give them the ability to bind enemies in melee, so we call that tying them up, right, in Dow 1. And then when units fight in melee, they kind of stick together as long as one of the participating units wants to stay in melee. E.g., a weaker range unit can't just run away, the melee unit tries to keep them engaged. They can't run away? What? Like, the way it works in Dow 1 is if you tie up a range unit, the range unit can run away. And if they get out of range, they can start firing again, right? Is this saying you can't do that? This is cool because what happens now is the players try to get their melee units in melee combat with the enemy's strong range units. Okay, so tie them up, that makes sense. So this is all very dynamic and offers lots of tactical options. Wait, so can you leave if you're tied up? Like if a ranged squad is tied up, can you actually leave? That's a big question. Maybe they talk about it. So the combat director makes sure you can leave combat as quickly as possible. We implemented many early outs and ways to abort animations. However, due to the melee binding, there are gameplay reasons why you might not be able to leave a combat quickly. Oh, so you will be able to leave, just not quickly. If you get tied up, it might take a little bit to get untied. As long as you don't use retreat. A retreat is in this game a mechanic that's in Company of Heroes, etc., where you press the button, your units instantly run away and they go back to your base, right? And you can't control them. They just go all the way home. So, okay, so it looks like that would be the quickest way to get them out of being tied up, but you won't be able to control them as a trade-off. And then if you want to get them out of being tied up, you'll have to wait a bit, or it won't be instant. I'm not sure about this. I want to see this in action before I give my opinion on it. I hope you can get out of being tied up with relative ease, and I hope it leads to like good micro decisions where it's not just, you know, it's not just like, oh, I got tied up, I guess I just retreat. I hope there's like some good decisions to be made there, but yeah, it sounds like they're going to give us some options at least, so we'll have to see what those are exactly. Okay, Shake Vivid back again. The goat of questions, the goat of this AMA. What was the reason to not include morale and suppression mechanics in the game? Yeah, they're actually removing morale, right? Which is kind of interesting. I'm interested in knowing the thinking behind not having them in the game. What was the main reason for not choosing them? So they want to create an authentic Warhammer 40K experience. This means we critically assess which mechanics from previous games still worked thematically for the factions and which didn't. Would it feel right if Terminators could be intimidated by suppressive fire? Would it make sense for Necron Warriors to have morale that could be broken? We decided to focus on creating mechanics that align more closely with the unique aspects each faction brought to the table. Top. Interesting. So rather than saying Necron Warriors don't have morale because they're robots, they're deciding that they're just going to remove morale from the game. You could still apply it to the races that aren't Necrons, the rest of the races that would have morale realistically. So this is kind of an interesting design choice. Yeah, we'll have to see how that looks in the end. And then they have an anecdote about this stuff. We had a long list of stuff like morale, but also environmental effects like poison, fire, and so on. We went into a game design meeting with this list, all excited, and then killed basically every idea. Because as soon as we thought about it, we was like, well, Necrons would mind the fire, wouldn't they? Space Marines can't really be poisoned, right? Orcs wouldn't run away from a fight because they're frightened. We basically decided not to take this route because there are so many factions not really bothered by these things. I'm curious what you guys think about this. I guess it depends if you like these mechanics in general. Yeah. Anyway, Dennis Delav has 2 weapon loadouts and options count towards their 100 models. Says in one interview it said there will be around 100 models at the start. But does the same model with a different weapon option count towards that 100? Nope. Weapon loadouts and options do not count towards the over 100 units and structures we'd have in total launch. Wow. So there's a lot of units. We might have something like 400 units if we would count that way. God damn. Wow. That's pretty insane. Okay, modding. Yeah, Dawn of War 1 was modded and had mod support for many years, so this is pretty important. It's a huge part of the success of the first 2 games. Yep. Are you planning to support modding and the modding community for DAO 4? So I come from a modding background myself. We aren't ready to share more information on this topic yet, but it is on our radar. So that sounds like a yes. That sounds like they will be supporting the mods. All right, let's get to the end of this now. So there's a few questions to wrap up. Will there be upkeep? Will there be point and energy decay? How do energy points work? Is there resource asymmetry except for Necrons? Can you describe how the Necron economy works? Okay. So there will be upkeep, which affects requisition. I wonder if that'll be in ranked. It says it's an option. I wonder if that'll be in ranked or not. We don't have resource point decay planned at this time. That's interesting. Like in Dawn of War 1, after 15 minutes, the amount of resources you get from the strategic points and relics like drops off a cliff, right? So if they don't have that in this game, that would change the late game a lot. Power is gained similar to Dawn of War 2. You capture points so you can build generators on to gain more power. Oh, so it's not like you don't build them in your base, you just build them on points. The orcs have wire similar to the first style game that grows and unlocks new units and upgrades the more orcs fight or build war banners. Okay, and their stratagems don't require command points. Fair enough. Necron structures expand their domain similar to creep in StarCraft. Interesting. We had a rough idea on where to start, but as with many things, iteration is key. Okay, gee, this is a long AMA. What can you tell us about stealth mechanics? Let's just blitz through these last few. Units with stealth remain invisible to enemies while they perform certain actions like attacking or when they are within the detection range of an enemy. Once revealed, the unit takes reduced damage from range attacks. Reduced damage? Okay. Functionally, any unit can detect stealth. Oh, okay. So you don't need to have a detection squad or commander or unit. You can just get close enough to them, I guess. Some factions may have upgrades associated with stealth. Fair enough. So Karis, again, with another question. How is veterancy gained and what does it change? As gained, well, I think we all know, right? You just fight. You're in combat. You engage in combat and that grants experience and that affects their maximum HP and their damage output. So a pretty straightforward implementation of the veterancy mechanic. And last question for the day from Sharp. Are there more units than we've seen? Are there units in the game that we haven't seen yet in the trailers? Are you keeping secrets from us? I like this question. Yes and yes. Oh my god. So there's more units than we've seen in the trailers. You have no idea. Sounds like they are cooking, dude. Sounds like they are cooking. Yeah. Good job. Awesome AMA. Yeah. This was a pretty fun read. There's a few things in here that give me a little bit of concern, like the units being tied up and the lack of base building, just going to be building on the points, right? I think there's no workers in the game. And them talking about the quality of life stuff. We'll see how it all pans out, but overall, pretty interesting AMA. Let me know what you guys think. I'm kind of curious. I've just been focused on reading this, but yeah. That's going to be it for this one. It's time to play some more games.